The impossible shot. How a falling pilot shot down a Japanese fighter with nothing but a pistol. A man is falling through the sky. No parachute opened yet. A Japanese fighter plane is coming straight at him to finish the job. He pulls out his pistol and does something that should be physically impossible. This is the story of Second Lieutenant Owen Baggett. March 1943, the skis above Burma. Most people think shooting down an enemy aircraft requires another aircraft, heavy machine guns, maybe some missiles. Owen Baggett proved them all wrong. What he did that day broke every rule of aerial combat. The Japanese didn't believe it happened. The Americans didn't believe it happened. But it did, and I'm about to tell you exactly how. Let's go back a few months before that insane moment. Owen Baggett wasn't some superhero. He was just a regular guy from Texas who joined the Army Air Forces. By early 1943, he was a bomber pilot stationed in India. His job was simple on paper but terrifying in reality. Fly B-24 Liberator bombers deep into Japanese-controlled territory. Drop bombs. Try not to get shot down. That last part was harder than it sounds. The situation in Burma was a complete nightmare. The Japanese controlled most of Southeast Asia by this point. They had air superiority. Their pilots were experienced, they were aggressive, and they had one particular reputation that scared the hell out of everyone. They didn't just shoot down planes. They would shoot pilots who were already parachuting down, defenseless men dangling in the air, easy targets. It was against every rule of war, but they did it anyway. Owen knew this. Every American pilot knew this. It's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night before a mission. You can train for mechanical failures. You can train for enemy fire. But how do you train for the possibility that even if you survive your plane going down, you still might get murdered while floating helplessly through the sky? On March 31st, 1943, Owen was going to find out. The mission that day was a bombing run. Owen wasn't flying his own plane. He was a co-pilot on a B-24 commanded by another officer. They were part of a formation heading to strike Japanese positions. The morning started normal. Well, as normal as flying into enemy territory can be. The bombers took off. They formed up. They headed toward their target. Then the Japanese fighters showed up. When you're in a bomber and enemy fighters appear, there's this moment of pure dread. Bombers are big. They're slow. They're loaded with fuel and explosives. They're basically flying targets. The only defense you have is your gunners, and hopping you can shoot the fighters down before they tear you apart. The Japanese fighters that day were relentless. They came in fast. They came in from multiple angles. The sky filled with tracer rounds and explosions. One by one, bombers in the formation started taking hits. Engines caught fire. Wings got shredded. Planes started going down. Owen's plane got hit hard, really hard. The kind of damage you don't recover from. Engines failed. The aircraft started losing altitude. The pilot gave the order that every airman dreads: bail out. Here's what people don't understand about bailing out of a damaged bomber. It's chaos. The plane is shaking. It's on fire. It's falling. There's smoke everywhere. You can barely see. You can barely breathe. You have to find the escape hatch. You have to jump out into nothing. And you have to do all of this while knowing that enemy fighters are still out there. Owen made it out. So did several other crew members. They jumped. For a brief moment, there's this weird sensation of relief. You're out of the burning plane. You're falling, but you're alive. You pull your ripcord, your parachute opens. You start drifting down. That relief lasted about 5 seconds. The Japanese fighters saw the parachutes. Multiple American airmen floating down, completely defenseless, and the fighters turned toward them. This is where it gets absolutely brutal. The fighters started making passes at the parachuting Americans. Machine gun fire ripped through the air. Owen watched as some of his crew members got hit. Bodies jerked. Parachutes collapsed. Men fell faster. He was watching his friends get murdered in the air, and he knew he was next. One of the Japanese fighters locked onto Owen. The pilot lined up for a strafing run. This was it. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. The fighter came in fast. Owen could see the plane clearly. He could probably see the pilot's face. Now here's what most people would do in this situation. Panic, pray, maybe try to make themselves a smaller target, except that they're about to die. Owen Baggett did something completely different, something that makes absolutely no sense, something that shouldn't have worked. He played dead. While hanging from a parachute, in the air, Owen went completely limp. He let his body hang loose. He made himself look like he'd already been hit, like he was already dead, just a corpse dangling from silk. The Japanese fighter came closer. The pilot was probably checking to see if he needed to waste more ammunition. He flew right up to Owen, close, really close, maybe 50 feet away. Some accounts say even closer, close enough that Owen could see inside the cockpit. And that's when Owen made his move. He had a Colt .45 pistol in his shoulder holster, standard issue for pilots. Most guys carried them for protection if they got shot down over enemy territory, for dealing with threats on the ground. No one thought you could actually use one in the air, against a plane, while falling through the sky. Owen pulled out that pistol. He aimed at the cockpit of the Japanese fighter, and he fired 4 shots, bang, 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 bang. One of those bullets went through the canopy. It hit the Japanese pilot right in the head. The fighter plane didn't explode. There was no dramatic fireball. It just started behaving strangely. The nose dipped. The plane began to spiral. It wasn't flying in a controlled way anymore. There was no one at the controls. The pilot was dead. The plane went down. It crashed somewhere in the Burmese jungle. Owen kept falling. He landed. He got captured by the Japanese almost immediately because he was in the middle of enemy territory. He spent the rest of the war as a prisoner of war, more than 2 years in Japanese POW camps. The conditions were horrific: starvation, disease, brutal treatment, but he survived. He made it to the end of the war. Now here's where this story gets complicated. After the war, Owen told people what happened. He said he shot down a Japanese fighter with his pistol while parachuting, and almost no one believed him. Think about it from their perspective. A guy hanging from a parachute, falling through the air, pulls out a pistol, shoots at a moving fighter plane, hits the pilot in the head, brings down the aircraft. It sounds completely made up. It sounds like the kind of tall tale soldiers tell at bars, the kind of story that gets bigger every time it's repeated. The Army Air Forces investigated. They interviewed Owen. They interviewed other survivors from that mission. Some crew members remembered seeing Japanese fighters go down that day, but in the chaos of the battle, no one could confirm Owen's specific claim. There was no wreckage to examine. It happened over Japanese-held jungle. There were no Japanese witnesses who survived to say what happened. No gun camera footage. Nothing concrete. The military couldn't officially confirm the kill. They acknowledged that Owen claimed it happened. They acknowledged that it was theoretically possible, however unlikely, but they couldn't put it in the official record books as a confirmed aerial victory. So Owen Baggett went down in history with this incredible story that might be true but can't be proven. And that's how it stayed for decades. Some people believed him. Some people didn't. Military historians argued about it. Aviation experts ran calculations about whether it was physically possible to hit a moving aircraft with a pistol under those conditions. Some said the odds were astronomical. Others said astronomical doesn't mean impossible. Here's what we know for sure. Owen Baggett did bail out of a damaged bomber on March 31, 1943. He did get strafed by Japanese fighters while parachuting. He was captured. He spent years as a POW. He was awarded the Silver Star for his actions that day. The citation for that medal mentions his conspicuous gallantry, but doesn't specifically confirm the shoot-down. He was a legitimate war hero regardless of whether he shot down that plane. But did he actually do it? Did he really shoot down a fighter plane with a pistol? Let's break down the physics and the possibilities. First, the pistol. The Colt .45 M1911. It's a powerful handgun. Effective range against a human target is maybe 50 yards, but effective range and maximum range are different things. The bullet doesn't just stop and fall straight down after 50 yards. It keeps going. The maximum range is closer to 1,500 yards. The bullet stays dangerous far beyond the effective range. Now hitting something at that extended range with any accuracy is nearly impossible. Handguns aren't designed for long-range precision. They're designed for close-quarters combat. But Owen wasn't shooting at 1,500 yards. He said the plane was right next to him, maybe 50 feet. That's about 15 yards. At that range, even with both the pilot and the plane moving, it's not crazy to think he could hit it. Next question. Could a .45 caliber bullet penetrate the canopy of a Japanese fighter? Yes. Most fighter canopies from that era were made of plexiglass or similar materials, not bulletproof. A .45 round would punch through. Not easily, but it would go through. Could it kill the pilot? Absolutely. If the bullet made it through the canopy and hit the pilot in the head, that's fatal. Doesn't matter if you're on the ground or in the air. A bullet to the head is a bullet to the head. Would the plane crash if the pilot was killed instantly? Yes. Fighter planes from World War II weren't fly-by-wire systems. They required constant input from the pilot. If the pilot dies, the plane doesn't just keep flying straight and level. It's going to start deviating. It's going to lose altitude. It's going to crash. The only question is how long it takes and where it comes down. So from a purely technical standpoint, everything Owen described is possible. Unlikely, yes. Incredibly lucky, absolutely, but possible. There's another factor that supports Owen's story. He had no reason to lie. He wasn't trying to get money or fame from this. He told the same story consistently for his entire life. He never embellished it. He never added dramatic details that weren't there. He just said what happened. And when the military couldn't confirm it, he didn't throw a fit. He didn't demand recognition. He just lived his life. That's not the behavior of someone making up a story. Also, there were documented cases of Japanese pilots strafing parachuting airmen. This wasn't unique to Owen's experience. It happened throughout the Pacific Theater. The Japanese had different cultural attitudes about warfare and surrender. They considered it dishonorable to be captured. They assumed anyone bailing out was trying to escape to fight another day. So they treated parachuting airmen as legitimate targets. It was brutal, but it was real. Given that context, the idea that a desperate American pilot would try to shoot back, even with just a pistol, makes sense. When you're about to be killed and you have a weapon in your holster, you're going to use it. You're not going to just hang there and accept death. You're going to fight back with whatever you have. Here's the thing that really matters. Whether Owen Baggett shot down that plane or not, he survived a situation that should have killed him. He was in a bomber that got shot down. He bilayed out over enemy territory. He got strafed by fighters while parachuting. Most guys in that situation died. Owen lived. He landed. He got captured, but he was alive. Then he spent more than 2 years in Japanese prisoner of war camps. If you know anything about Japanese POW camps in World War II, you know how bad they were. The survival rate was terrible. Prisoners were starved. They were beaten. They were worked to death. They died from disease. They died from exhaustion. They died from mistreatment. The Geneva Convention meant nothing. Prisoners were treated as less than human. Owen endured all of that. He survived. He made it to August 1945 when the war ended. He came home. He got to see his family again. He got to live a full life after the war. That alone makes him a hero. That alone makes his story worth telling. The pistol shot, that's the legendary part. That's the part that gets people's attention. That's the part that sounds impossible. But the real story is about survival, about toughness, about refusing to give up even when everything is trying to kill you. Let's say, for argument's sake, that Owen didn't shoot down that plane. Let's say he fired at it and the plane went down for some other reason. Maybe it got hit by another aircraft. Maybe it had mechanical failure. Maybe the pilot was already wounded from earlier fighting and passed out. Let's say Owen's bullets didn't actually cause the crash. Does that make him less of a hero? Does that make his story less impressive? He still did everything else. He still survived the impossible. He still fought back when he was supposed to be helpless. He still made it through years of hell as a POW. The shoot-down is just one moment in a much bigger story of courage and survival. But personally, I think he did it. I think Owen Baggett shot down that Japanese fighter with his pistol. Here's why. The man had no reason to lie. He told the same story his entire life. He never tried to profit from it. He never sought attention. When people questioned it, he didn't get defensive. He just said that's what happened. That's not the behavior of someone telling a tall tale. Also, combat is full of impossible moments. Things that shouldn't happen but do. Lucky shots, crazy circumstances, one-in-a-million events. That's war. That's fighting for your life. When adrenaline takes over and survival instinct kicks in, people do incredible things. People accomplish things that seem impossible. Think about some of the other crazy stories from World War II. The soldier who survived 2 nuclear bombs. The pilot who landed a plane with half the wing missing. The submarine that sank a train. War is full of these stories. Most of them are verified and documented. They really happened. So why is Owen's story so hard to believe? Maybe it's because we have this idea that aerial combat has to involve aircraft, that you need a plane to shoot down a plane. The idea that a guy with a pistol could bring down a fighter sounds like something from a movie. It sounds too dramatic to be real, but real life is often more dramatic than fiction. Owen Baggett died in 2006. He was 85 years old. He lived a long life after the war. He got married. He had kids. He worked. He was a regular guy who happened to have an extraordinary experience during the worst war in human history. Near the end of his life, military historians and researchers became interested in his story again. They tried to find evidence. They looked through Japanese records that had been declassified. They searched for crash reports. They interviewed other veterans who might have been there. They tried everything they could to confirm what happened that day in March 1943. They never found definitive proof. No Japanese pilot's body was ever recovered with a .45 caliber bullet in the skull. No crash site was ever located with a fighter that went down from pistol fire. The evidence just isn't there. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Just because we can't prove it happened doesn't mean it didn't happen. The official position remains that Owen Baggett claimed to have shot down a Japanese fighter with his pistol, but the claim cannot be verified. It's listed as probable in some records, unconfirmed in others. It will probably never be fully verified now. Too much time has passed. Too many witnesses are gone. The jungle has reclaimed whatever evidence might have existed. But you know what? Owen Baggett doesn't need that official confirmation to be a legitimate hero. He earned that title through everything else he did, through his service, through his survival, through his years as a prisoner enduring conditions most of us can't imagine. The shoot-down is just the headline. The real story is much deeper. And maybe that's fitting. Maybe some stories are better left in that space between confirmed history and legend. Maybe the mystery is part of what makes it powerful. It forces us to think about what's possible, about what people are capable of when pushed to the absolute limit, about how thin the line is between life and death in combat. What we know for absolute certain is this. On March 31, 1943, Second Lieutenant Owen Baggett bilaid out of a damaged bomber over Burma. He was attacked while parachuting down. He survived. He was captured. He endured years of imprisonment. He came home. He lived to tell the tale, and somewhere in all that chaos, maybe, just maybe, he pulled off the most incredible shot in the history of aerial warfare. A man falling through the sky. A Japanese fighter coming to kill him. A pistol, 4 shots, 1 impossible hit. True or not, it's a hell of a story. And sometimes when the person telling the story is someone like Owen Baggett, someone who earned the right to be believed through everything else they endured, maybe we should just accept that some things really did happen, even if they sound impossible. Because war is impossible. Survival is impossible. Heroes are made in impossible moments. And on that day in March 1943, Owen Baggett did something that should have been impossible. Whether we can prove it or not doesn't change what he knew happened. It doesn't change what he lived through. And it doesn't change the fact that he deserves to be remembered. Owen Baggett shot down a Japanese fighter with a pistol while parachuting from a damaged bomber. At least, that's what he said. And after everything he went through, after everything he survived, after everything he endured, I'm inclined to believe him. Because if anyone earned the benefit of the doubt, it's the guy who fell from the sky and lived to tell about it. The Japanese pilot who got too close never knew what hit him. The American pilot hanging from that parachute knew exactly what he did. And that's enough. That has to be enough. Because sometimes the only witness to an impossible moment is the person who made it happen. And sometimes their word is all we have. And sometimes that's all we need. If you want more insane World War II stories that sound too crazy to be true, check out the next video.